Welcome everybody to another episode of The Last Line Show. I'm your host, Jonathan Boozer, and today specifically what I want to talk to you about are some Guardians, specifically the Guardians of the Galaxy. Now say what you will about Marvel and their writing, but so far I think they've done a great job, definitely delivering us a lot of great stories, whether they have plot points and plot holes or not, say what you will. But they do have a lot to do and a lot to work on if they're going to eventually get these Guardians of the Galaxy back to Earth to join up with the Avengers and our Earth's mightiest heroes, or at least what's left of them. So they have some work to do. There's a lot of directors, actors, script writers, and a lot of content that they got to figure out to merge them all together. So what I want to do is give you some of the plot points that I think they can basically hint at or straight up deliver so that we're prepared on understanding why our Guardians eventually have to get to Earth. Now, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 and Thor Ragnarok are meant to really kickstart off the Infinity Wars and eventually bring all of the Infinity Stones to the gauntlet of Thanos so that he can rule and destroy the entire universe. But exactly what are they going to cover in the explaining of how we're going to get to see them come to Earth? So let's go over some of those big questions. How will the Guardians get to Earth, and what's the status of the Infinity Stones? Exactly how will Thanos get to those stones and get them in his grasp? Wait, what's going on? Wait. No. I am not big enough to be getting hacked yet. I am not big enough.
Take that. Yeah! What's up, everybody? Finally, I've gotten through. My name is Joe Machado. I'm the co-creator of the GSM Podcast, and I have finally made it onto The Last Line Show. Boozer has no idea what I'm doing. I'm sure whatever thing he's talking about, like Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 or whatever, is worth talking about. But there's another group of Guardians getting ready to expand their own galaxy. And while Marvel's storytelling has always been their strong point, it's been a weak point for Bungie's epic shooter Destiny. What I'm going to do is I'm going to recap the journey so far and cover the three biggest plot points Destiny 2 needs to address going into September. And the first one is a big one. Number 3, Rasputin. The first year of Destiny has a lot of common storylines, everyone converging on the eventual question of what happened to lead to the collapse. As the Guardians awoke in this decrepit cosmodrome, each character introduced with the same backstory just lacked a little bit of depth. The Vanguard trio, Master Rahul, the Speaker, the Exo-Stranger, the Queen, they all came with their own past baggage, but none of them really had any opportunity to explore any of their backgrounds. They were left as just hollow, simple characters with shit to sell and easily less than 50 lines of dialogue. Subtle quips that hinted at much more interesting subplot than what the game actually offered. But there was one fleshed out character across year one that stands to appear in Destiny 2, and that's Rasputin. The AI warmind tasked with protecting humanity was the first warmind to discover the coming darkness. However, when it became clear that he couldn't fulfill his core programming, Rasputin implemented a protocol known as Midnight Exogen to reconfigure his programming for long-term survival, abandoning humanity until he was reawakened by the Iron Lords in their search for Siva, something that players got a chance to experience in year 3. His reawakening didn't come with humanity's protection. He ended up killing 8 out of the 10 Iron Lords, leaving Lord Saladin and Aphrodite to essentially sell you shit in the tower whenever you needed it. At the end of the day, though, Destiny 2 is bound to show a more powerful, but a more vulnerable Rasputin. As the only AI warmind left, Rasputin is afraid of the incoming Cabal force that can certainly overtake his bunker. Lord knows the Hive, the Fallen, Siva have all done that in the last 3 years. But this comes with an opportunity. Year 1 through 3 created a history for Rasputin that players actually got a chance to play. The future could branch off into any direction for the character. For some context on that potential direction, Cade 6 in one Grimoire card is quoted as saying, "If Rasputin had all of those mighty tools and it lost, what did it learn? What's it going to try this time around? I was a servant too. I was an instrument of war, bound to the lesser will of a master. But even I learned to be something more."
I have no clue what that was. Sorry about that, guys. Alright, where was I? Oh, Guardians. What makes the Guardians travel back to Earth? So right now, so far, there's not much tethering the Guardians of the Galaxy to Earth. Pretty much the only thing holding them there or bringing them back is basically Star-Lord Peter Quill's basically heritage. He's half human and his mother was from Earth. But there's really nothing left for him there, so why would he ever come back? As a child, he was abducted by Yondu and the Ravagers, so there's really no reason at the moment for him ever to come back to Earth. It's a whole new world, time has changed, and he's now in space. Really, there's not much reason I would ever want to go back. But they have to figure out a way to bring him back. So Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 actually pushes them out even further into space. And you actually see them getting new alien companions, and you see Peter Quill actually finding his basically living planet father, played by Kurt Russell. So there's a lot more of them going into space and going further away from planet Earth. So I'm trying to figure out what motivation they would ever have for them to come back. Now, I had theorized a long time ago that maybe at the end of Iron Man 3, he kind of had like a moment where he's kind of done with being Iron Man, and he takes, in the comics, his kind of space-worthy suit, and he goes out into space. Maybe he intercepted a transmission, maybe he heard a human voice from space like Peter Quill's, I don't know. But I had theorized that maybe, just like in the comics, he goes out into space hoping for some help in future battles or whatever it may be. Maybe he knows something about Thanos that we don't, and eventually he teams up with the Guardians and brings them back. Now clearly nothing like that ever happened, and with Spider-Man Homecoming, we know nothing like that's ever going to happen. So I'm very curious as to what exactly it is that's going to bring them back home. Why are they going to come back to fight Thanos? How are they even going to know that Thanos is on Earth, getting ready to destroy the Avengers and our heroes of Earth? So with Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, I'm sure it's going to be a great ride, but they have to tell us, or at least hint to us, why they would ever even venture anywhere near remotely back to Earth. So I'm curious to see what they're going to do to make us get that idea in our heads that we will see the Guardians on Earth. What the fuck is going on?
Oh man, finally. This room is nice. Anyway, what was I talking about? Anyway, number 2, The Awoken. Year 2 saw Bungie take their epic shooter away from its constraining repetition and thrust it head-on into the best year it had seen since launch. The Taken King expansion saw players who had run the Dark Below raid go up against Oryx, King of the Taken and father to the God Knight of the Hive, Crota. The Taken King gave players the most diversity in reaching max level. Players could achieve the highest light level through the Crucible and Iron Banner, or through Strikes and Nightfalls, or through running the raid itself, making it one of the most accessible experiences for newcomers and veterans alike. However, there's one event that transcends the entirety of the expansion before the story even begins, and that's the Battle of Saturn's Rings. As Oryx's dreadnought approaches the system, the Awoken, who had for the most part stayed away from any events of the Humanity and the Traveler and anything that took place on Earth for that matter, met the Taken King with the majority of their fleet. The Queen, her brother, and the Awoken army stood against Oryx's dreadnought, and with one shot, they were gone, blown into the emptiness of Saturn's rings. Many players believe the brother to be alive as per a grimoire card titled The Aftermath, which detailed an unnamed individual who survives the attack and scours the area for the Queen's life force, while others go as far as to believe the Queen herself had survived the attack. In either instance, the death of the Queen would have sent what was left of the Awoken in the Reef into chaos. With both the Queen and her brother presumed dead, Awoken hierarchy would have eventually collapsed, and the Vanguard's potential of going to war against the Cabal without any Awoken support really makes for an interesting and intriguing storyline. Getting answers as to the current condition of the Queen would probably go a long way into winning back players who felt that her death was just a cast aside, but seeing a fractured Awoken society spread thin across the galaxy, forced to survive on their own, would place them and humanity in very similar positions, potentially bringing the two societies back together for the first time since the collapse.
What the fuck? Hannah! Did you pay the internet? Alright, where was I again? Oh yeah, the next big question is, what's the status of the Infinity Stones? Where are they, and how is Thanos going to get them? It's kind of a loaded question, but right now we know where most of them really are, all but one. Right now you have the Space Stone, that's the blue stone. Now this was actually the Tesseract from Captain America 1. Now this is currently in the Vault of Asgard. So now with Thor Ragnarok and Asgard basically getting its world rocked by Hailey, the goddess of death, this might be a good opportunity for Thanos to send a minion or basically go himself, and amongst all the rubble and all the destruction and whatever may be happening, all the chaos, maybe he can actually sneak in with his big ass hands and grab that stone. So I don't know if that's what he's gonna do, but who knows. Now next we have the Mind Stone. Now that's the yellow stone. Now this stone was actually in Loki's scepter. Now, for the most part, this currently resides in the forehead of what was once Jarvis, now Vision. Now, I think we can all think and all know that Vision's probably gonna die. I don't wanna think about it right now.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it because they would never understand.
But at some point, we gotta let go. We gotta let it go. Vision's probably gonna die. I like the character, but we're not gonna see him for long. I don't think he will. But how will he go? Is he gonna be the last stop on basically the gem train, and he's just gonna come by back to Earth, and he's gonna have all the Infinity Stones on his gauntlet but one, and he basically just takes out Vision with his own hands? Will he send another minion? Because Lord, how that's been working for him, sending minions to do his dirty work. I personally think he just might have to finally get his hands dirty. But we're gonna see him die at some point. I mean, unless he finds a way to live without that stone in his forehead, he's probably not gonna last that much longer. But really good question as to how is Thanos gonna pry that stone out of his head. Then we have the Reality Stone. That's that red ether stone that we saw in Thor 2. Yeah, Thor 2. But basically, this stone was basically held by the dark elf Malekith. So after they defeated him, the Asgards actually gave that stone to the Collector, Del Toro's weird-ass character. I mean, I love the character, but he's a weird dude. Now, I have no clue why the Asgards thought that leaving it with him was a safe bet. I mean, he's a slaver, and he's just overall weird. But they left it with him, so do I think he's gonna get killed? No. He's basically an eternal being, if you guys don't know. He's one of the many Eternals, and he's probably gonna be hard to kill anyway, so I'm sure Thanos is probably just gonna roll up and be like, give it to me. He'll get scared, he'll give it to him. I don't know. But they gotta figure out all this shit. So this is a lot of things that they gotta figure out. But that's all I have to say on that note. Then we have the Power Stone. This is the purple gem. Now this was actually in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1. Basically this was captured by the Guardians and the crew from Ronan, and essentially this now resides in the Nova Corps vault. A lot of vaults holding these gems now. Now, last I remember, the Nova Corps needed the help from the Ravagers and the Guardians to stay alive, so I don't know how strong they really are. But personally, I guess it's safe right now, for the time being, I guess. And then finally, we have the Time Stone. Now, the Time Stone is green, and basically this is in the Eye of Agamotto in Doctor Strange. Now, right now, Doctor Strange is not using this. It's not his permanent weapon. Doctor Strange did put it back in the Sanctum Sanctorum in New York, so it is just sitting there. Now, this is deeply protected with magic. I'm sure Thanos could probably get through it, unless he sends yet another minion, but I truly believe that he's just gonna have to get his hands dirty on that one as well. But right now, it is pretty safe in a magical place. Finally, we have the Soul Gem. Now, we haven't seen this gem yet. It's probably gonna be orange by powers of deduction. In the comics, it was green, but basically, we don't know how they're gonna introduce this. In the comics, often, it's actually held by Adam Warlock. It actually is what he uses for pretty much the time being of his powers, and he is actually the perfect man-made human that is actually an android. So, I don't know, it'll be kind of another Vision, so maybe they'll get rid of Vision and then bring in Adam Warlock. I don't know if they'll come up with a different idea for them to bring him in, but I think they should do Adam Warlock. It's a really good character, and he eventually joins up with the Guardians. That could be a reason as to why we get the Guardians back to Earth. Maybe they find Adam Warlock, and Adam Warlock, by having the Soul Gem, is just attracted to Earth. Maybe he knows something's gonna happen, and maybe that's why they venture. That's a little sub-note that I think could happen. I really would like them to introduce Adam Warlock by the end of Volume 2 of Guardians of the Galaxy, but that's a lot to cram into that movie because there's already a massive cast into that movie. But who knows what they'll really do with that. Are you fucking kidding? Are you kidding me? What the?
Tiny Hulk baby hands. Oh, I didn't know it took back. Number 1, the Traveler. Since the game's debut, the image of a giant orb above Earth has been the visual that has defined destiny. The Traveler arrived unannounced and bestowed its power to the Guardians, its knowledge to the people, and its protection against the incoming darkness. Every Guardian that arrived at the city would turn around and gaze at the Traveler in the distance. However, since the game hit shelves, the Traveler has essentially been a computer screensaver. Grimoire cards that discuss the Traveler speak in tones that even Shakespeare wouldn't understand. And at the end of the day, the Traveler has bestowed power and decided to stay for really no idea as to why. One consistent theory is that the Traveler is inherently evil, an agent of darkness. which would lend credence to Rasputin's inherent distrust of the Traveler in the Grimoire card entitled Abhorrent Imperative, a last resort measure used to prevent the Traveler from leaving Earth during a major calamity by crippling it. Whether this is true or not would require better storytelling than Destiny has had in the past. However, fans are content to believe that the Traveler will not be on Earth for long, leaving the Vanguard to fend for themselves. While the plot point of the Traveler is the biggest unanswered question, the only part of that question Destiny 2 would be in a position to answer would be its apparent inability to protect the city. Legends say that the Traveler has protected the city against the darkness since its arrival, and if the Cabal's invasion is an omen for anything, it's that the Traveler is not able to do that anymore. Missions like Chamber of Night revealed how far enemies have gone to damage the Traveler, and others like Outbound Signal hint at a channel the Cabal have been using to relay intel about the Guardians and the Traveler. As the introductory Grimoire card stated, now the Traveler hangs silent, above humanity's final sanctuary. It may be healing, it may be dying. It gave everything it had to save us, and now its power lies with us, the Guardians.
Alright, technology's garbage. That's it. Technology's done. Alright, anyway, final points. Really, there's two big questions from the two questions that I had already mentioned. These two questions are, how does Thanos come to Earth? And then how do the Guardians follow? So, me personally, right now, these Infinity Stones are essentially in highly secure places right now. You have Asgard, you have the Collector, who has his treasures, and then, you have all these other places like Vision's forehead, because he's very powerful. But these are all in so-called secure places. So now, even though Thanos has tried to send his minions to gather these stones and they have all failed, does he finally get his hands dirty? Does he actually go around the galaxy just finding these places? Boom. Asgard. Asgard's dealing with some shit on their end with Hailey and Ragnarok at the end of Asgard. He just rolls up and steals that shit. Doesn't have to do a lot of work. Hailey's already doing the heavy lifting for him. Or does he go to the Nova Corps and straight up destroy the Nova Corps? Now that also could eventually give us Nova, the Nova Centurion that eventually becomes the last sole survivor, basically soldier from Nova Corps. That could be a really good point, and in a video I'm going to talk about in the future how I'd like to see Nova, the actual character, not just like the Nova Corps, the Nova Force. I'd like to see that actual superhero come to play. He'd be a very strong ally in defeating Thanos himself, and he has in the comics. So maybe him destroying the planet that, the Nova Corps is on, maybe that would be a good point to actually bring him around, because he'd be the last survivor. Maybe he's on a mission somewhere else, and he survives, whatever Thanos does to that planet. So maybe he goes to Nova and steals the Power Stone and just desolates the entire planet. So maybe he finally has to go to Earth to get the Mind Gem, because right now that's the last thing, and that's the only thing that's on Earth, outside of the Soul Gem, which we really don't know where it is. And the Eye of Agamotto, that's also there. So maybe he's just getting his hands dirty. And that's how maybe this just leaves a basically chaos and destruction breadcrumbs for the Guardians of the Galaxy to come follow. Right now we do know that, from Guardians of the Galaxy 1, they found kind of like this hero within them, and these kind of outlaws want to do some good in the world, or in the galaxy. So maybe this is the real thing that actually brings them to planet Earth. All of this destruction that Thanos leaves behind, finally getting his hands dirty, the Mad Titan himself. Maybe all of these breadcrumbs bring the Guardians traveling back to Earth as he just makes his carnage in his way through. Maybe that's it. Maybe that's what they gotta do. I don't know how they'll do that. I don't know if they have the budget to do that, or maybe this will just be stories, or we'll just see the aftermath, the burning planet that has the Nova Corps just desolated, and maybe Asgard pretty much destroyed, and then you have, the Collector dealing with whatever happens to him. Maybe we'll see all that destruction in the aftermath, and then we'll finally see the Mad Titan in the Avengers Infinity Wars movie. I think that's how they can really tie everything together, is have those guys following the destruction. But that obviously requires Thanos to get his hands dirty himself. But anyway, that's really all I have to say on that note. They do have to tell us and have to have us understand why we're going to see them in the Avengers Infinity War. Because right now it makes no sense to why they would travel to Earth. So, Marvel's got some work to do. They're pretty good at telling their stories. I hope they're not done yet. And for the most part, I'm very excited to see what the Marvel Cinematic Universe has in store for us. I'm very excited. I want to know what you guys have to say about it. I'd love to know your opinions, or any of the theories that I said make sense. Do you have your own theories as to what Thanos is going to do, what the Guardians are going to do to come to Earth? I'd love to know, but I'd love to know your opinion. Please leave a comment if you have any thoughts or any of your own personal opinions. And other than that, guys, keep being nerds and keep defending the nerdy things that we love.
Hey, what's going on, guys? Hope you guys enjoyed the video. This is my first time in the Last Line show, and I'm thoroughly enjoying it. Your thoughts on Destiny 2? Anything in particular?
They got a lot of work ahead of them. They got a lot of goddamn work. They got so much to work with, but a lot of goddamn work. It's like if someone gave you every ingredient that you could possibly have to make like the best meal, and then you make like a ham sandwich. It's like you had a lot to work with. You made something very underwhelming. That's really what their situation is right now.
It is true. That is, I wish I could say more about Destiny 2. They do have a lot of work to do. I feel like that ham sandwich example, they'd just be missing mustard at this point.
They would be.
They're missing the key
Zero
components
condiments.
that make Destiny great. It's just a lack of condiments, you know? You just don't have that.
Now, what about the Guardians of the Galaxy?
Guardians of the Galaxy, I'm excited for. I really am. I think the cast is really well built. I kind of lend credence to the idea that it wouldn't surprise me if Avengers Infinity War starts off with the destruction of the Nova Corps.
Makes
Like,
sense.
literally, the movie begins with the Nova Corps just in flames. And
wouldn't be
Thanos
that sad.
walking away with the power gem. I do think, however, I do like the idea of something you said with Adam Warlock. The idea that if Adam Warlock is the one who has the last stone, that there would be this constant like vibration for the stones to be united in one place. So the Guardians might be coming in smack in the middle of Thanos' attacks on Earth, because the stones have this natural need to want to be together. It would be tough to establish because that hasn't been the case for any of the movies.
There's been no sense that that's a thing.
But that would, writing wise, that would make sense. But no, I'm really excited for Guardians. I think it's going to do a really good job of establishing these characters. But James Gunn has already said, like, you won't see certain things in Guardians of the Galaxy 2, but I still hope that we do, because it's the only platform left aside from Thor Ragnarok to actually establish what Thanos was doing.
Both those movies are supposed to kick off Infinity War, so.
Yeah, so we'll see. Anyway, that's going to be it for me. Thank you for having me on. I know.
Thank you for joining me.
You can find me twitter.com/DiamondJab. And of course, I am the co-creator of the Game Set Match podcast, myself and Keenan Lewis, KJ Lewis 25 on Twitch. That's it.
And I'm also on there as well.
Yeah,
I like video games. I'm always forgotten, so don't worry. Even on my own show, I'm forgotten on my own show that I'm also on. I want you to know that I'm also on a video game podcast. We're on iTunes. I'm one of the main people on there. Been around since episode 2. But it's okay. This is only natural that I was forgotten. But yeah, if you like video games and primarily video game talk, join us on iTunes. GSM Match Podcast.
Yeah, or twitch.tv/GSM_podcast. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, guys. And like I said, keep being nerds, keep defending the nerdy things we love, and try not to forget about me like this guy.
Am I like super white right now?
No, you actually,
In auto-tone?
you actually got a little color to you, bro.
Okay.
Hannah, did you pay the internet? Don't really answer that. I know you paid it. Sanctum Sanctorum. Sanctum Sanctorum. I'm gonna leave out. I don't like saying like people leave likes. They can. If I had a bigger following, I'd say leave a like.